She was just the quietest passenger on the plane, sitting by the window with her headphones in and her gaze lost somewhere above the clouds. But when two F-22 fighter jets locked onto their airliner after a radar glitch, and the pilot suddenly heard her calm voice cut through the emergency frequency saying, "This is Commander Raven 01. Disengage and hold position," every trained soldier in the sky froze, because they knew that call sign had been retired years ago, belonging to a legendary Air Force operative presumed dead. What happened next made headlines across the entire world. Before we begin this unbelievable story of secrets, bravery, and justice, make sure you hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss another emotional story that will make your heart race and your soul tremble. Now let's begin. The hum of the engines filled the cabin of Flight 92 as it soared somewhere over the Atlantic, sunlight spilling softly across the rows of tired passengers. Among them sat a woman who looked like she belonged to silence itself. Her name was Ava Cole, or at least that was what her boarding pass said. She wore a gray hoodie, her hair tied back, a paperback novel open in her lap that she never really read. To anyone watching, she was just another quiet traveler trying to escape somewhere or perhaps return home. But beneath the calm rhythm of her pulse lay years of buried command codes, encrypted orders, and memories of Black Ops missions that never made it into any official record. 3 rows behind her, a toddler cried, the mother humming a lullaby to soothe him, while a businessman tapped impatiently on his laptop, and 2 flight attendants exchanged soft chatter about the weather. It was peaceful, ordinary, until the captain's voice broke through the intercom, strained and uneasy. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a temporary communications error. Please remain calm and seated." Ava's eyes flickered open, her body going still. Communications error. That phrase meant something else to her, something she hadn't heard since her last mission. Back when she was still part of Project Raven, a classified Air Force intelligence unit disbanded after a mission gone wrong in the Persian Gulf. The memory flashed before her eyes. The explosion, the radio silence, the command tower ordering her team to stand down, and then nothing. The world had thought she died with the rest of them. She had wanted it that way. The captain's voice returned, slightly more nervous this time. "We've been asked to maintain course while we resolve an identification issue." Identification issue. That's what the Air Force said when a civilian plane was about to be intercepted. Ava glanced out the window and her breath caught. Far below, through the scattered clouds, 2 distant shadows sliced through the blue horizon, approaching fast. F-22 Raptors. The unmistakable angular wings, the metallic glint of their fuselages, the way they flew in synchronized precision. It could only mean one thing. The plane had been flagged as a possible threat. Panic began to ripple through the cabin as a few passengers noticed the same thing. The businessman's laptop fell from his knees, clattering to the floor, while the flight attendants exchanged panicked glances. One of them rushed toward the cockpit, whispering furiously into the intercom. Ava closed her eyes for a brief second, her mind running through emergency protocols she wasn't supposed to remember anymore. Her throat tightened, not from fear, but from the weight of memories long buried. Her last mission, her team, her call sign. Raven 01. She had sworn never to use it again, not after what happened. Not after her command decision cost lives. She'd left it all behind, faked her death, and disappeared into civilian life, living in small towns under different names, avoiding all traces of her past. But fate had a cruel sense of timing. The oxygen mask compartments rattled slightly as turbulence hit. Someone screamed. The captain's voice cracked over the intercom again. "Please stay seated. Everything is under control." Ava could hear the fear in his tone. He was lying to keep order. She unbuckled her seatbelt, earning a startled look from the old man beside her. "Miss, you need to stay seated," he said, voice trembling. Ava gave him a faint smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's going to be fine," she whispered, standing anyway and slipping quietly toward the back of the plane. She moved with practiced calm, every step measured, every breath steady, like she'd done this 1,000 times before. As she passed the galley, one of the flight attendants grabbed her arm. "Ma'am, please!" "You can't be back here." Ava's voice was quiet but firm, the tone of command she'd buried deep within her. "How close are they?" The attendant froze. What? Ava pointed out the small window in the galley door where two metallic silhouettes glinted closer. The Raptors! How close are they? The attendant's lips parted in disbelief. How do you— Just answer. Maybe a mile or less? Ava nodded, her heart steady now. Then we don't have much time. She reached into her backpack, pretending to search for gum, but her fingers instead brushed against a compact, worn-out device no civilian should own, a secure frequency transponder, a relic from her days in the Air Force. She hesitated. The moment she activated it, every radar within 100 miles would light up with her old code. They'd know she was alive, the very people she'd run from for years. But if she didn't, the Raptors would stay locked on this plane until command ordered a takedown. She took a deep breath and pressed the activation switch. The small LED blinked green. Static crackled faintly in her ear through a hidden earpiece she'd kept for emergencies. She whispered into it, "Command Channel Sierra Bravo 9. This is Raven 01. Identify your intercept reason." For a few seconds, silence. Then the radio on the other end hissed like the world itself was exhaling. "Say again," a voice stammered. "Identify yourself." Ava's tone sharpened, cold and commanding. "This is Raven 01, authorization Echo 9 Tango 7. Who authorized this intercept?" The voice went dead quiet. Then another voice came through, older, hesitant, almost reverent. "Ma'am, that call sign's been retired for 11 years. Ava exhaled slowly. "Not anymore." On the other end, the two F-22 pilots looked at each other in utter disbelief, the younger one whispering, "Sir, did she just say Raven 01? The older pilot swallowed hard. "That's impossible. She's supposed to be dead." Back in the passenger cabin, turbulence shook the plane harder. Passengers were crying, praying, some recording with their phones. The captain turned toward his co-pilot, whispering harshly, "Who is she talking to back there?" But before he could move, the F-22s broke formation slightly, holding distance. They weren't firing. They weren't retreating either. They were waiting. Ava's voice came again through the encrypted channel, steady as iron. "Transmit to command. Tell them Raven 01 is declaring immediate override authority under Black Protocol." The silence that followed was heavier than air. The pilots didn't know what to do, because that order, Black Protocol, was reserved for only one type of person, the kind who could command every Air Force unit in the sky without question. And there had only ever been one woman granted that status, the quiet passenger who never should have existed. The F-22 pilots hesitated mid-air, their breathing shallow beneath their helmets as the voice of a ghost echoed through their secure comms. "Raven 01, the older pilot whispered, his gloved hands trembling on the controls. "She can't be alive?" Yet the unmistakable tone of authority in Ava's voice, the cadence of a commander who once led them through missions that rewrote history, left no room for doubt. "Command, this is Talon Leader," he called in, his voice tense. "We have a voice claiming to be Raven 01 on secure frequency. Please advise." The radio stayed silent for a moment too long before a low, grave voice came through. "Hold position, Talon Leader. Maintain visual. Do not engage. Repeat, do not engage." The order itself made every muscle in his body tighten. That was the same instruction used during the classified Ghost Reaper operation years ago. An operation led by one woman whose record had been erased, whose very name had been buried under layers of security clearances. Ava Cole, the quiet passenger in seat 14A, was supposed to be a legend, a myth, a name whispered in the halls of the Pentagon and then forgotten. But now she was alive, 30,000 feet over the Atlantic, sitting on a commercial plane filled with terrified passengers who had no idea their lives hung by a thread. Back inside the cabin, the situation grew chaotic. Passengers were demanding answers, shouting at the crew. A child screamed as the plane jolted again. The captain, face drenched in sweat, tried to keep his composure. "We are in contact with air control. Everything is being handled," but his voice quivered. Ava returned to her seat slowly, her expression calm but her mind racing. She knew that the moment she broke radio silence, everything she had tried to hide was undone. Somewhere in a dark military control room, her name was being whispered again, data files being reopened, faces pale as they saw her call sign appear on a radar feed for the first time in over a decade. And in that same moment, far across the ocean, a man named General Marcus Hale, head of the Air Force Strategic Command, stood up from his desk in shock as a young officer rushed in. "Sir, we've just received an encrypted signal from an inactive code, Raven 01. Hale's pen fell from his hand. "That's not possible," he muttered. "Who authorized this intercept?" "No one, sir. The F-22s picked her up after a radar misfire. Civilian flight. She initiated contact." Hale's eyes hardened. "Patch her through. Now!" Back on the plane, Ava's device crackled again, a low, familiar voice filling her ear. "Raven 01. This is command. You're supposed to be dead." Her heart clenched at the sound of that voice, Hale's voice, the man who had once been her superior officer, her mentor, and the one who signed the order that disbanded her team after the mission went south. "I told you to bury my file for a reason," Ava said quietly. "Why are Raptors intercepting a civilian flight?" Hale's tone turned grim. Someone hacked the identification transponder. "The system flagged your plane as hostile. But now that you've made contact, you've set off every global alert we have. The moment your code hit the network, satellite AI reactivated your old unit registry. We're being flooded with signals." Ava frowned. "Signals? What kind of signals?" "The kind that shouldn't exist," Hale said darkly. "Someone's trying to trace you, and if they know you're alive, they'll come for me," Ava finished for him. Her gaze drifted toward the horizon, where the F-22s held their line like metallic guardians, their engines humming through the clouds. "How long do I have?" Hale's silence was answer enough. Then he spoke softly, almost with regret. "Ava, the last time your name appeared on record, you were the top operative in Project Raven. The enemies you made back then, some of them sit in offices now, high enough to bury anyone they want. If they know you're still breathing, they won't just come for you. They'll erase that entire plane." Ava's jaw tightened. "Then I'll stop them first." She reached down and adjusted the small transponder device, switching its mode to relay. "Send me the live ID of who initiated the intercept code." Hale hesitated. "That's classified." "Then unclassify it," she snapped. "People's lives are at stake." There was a long pause before a set of numbers scrolled across her small screen. Her blood ran cold when she recognized the signature key. It belonged to Director Nolan Voss, the man who had led the final mission that ended her career, the man who ordered her team to be sacrificed when intelligence went bad, and the man she had spent years trying to forget. "He's alive?" she breathed. Hale's voice came through heavy. "Alive and promoted. He runs Blackguard Security now, a private defense contractor. And if he's hijacked a military ID system, he's probably doing it to start something bigger." Ava's eyes darkened with resolve. "He's using me as bait." Hale didn't answer, but the truth hung there. The radar lock wasn't random. The false threat alert, the Raptor's intercept, the communications error, it was all staged to smoke her out. To confirm that she still existed, and she'd walked right into it. Outside, the sky had darkened, a distant storm brewing as lightning danced over the clouds. Ava turned off the device, slipping it back into her bag. Around her, passengers whispered prayers, held hands, and watched the fighter jets glide beside them like silent shadows. The mother with the crying child was now clutching him close, her lips trembling. Ava's heart twisted at the sight. Innocent people caught in a war they didn't even know existed. She closed her eyes briefly and whispered to herself, "Not again." The last time she said those words was on a tarmac in Basra, kneeling beside her fallen teammate as gunfire echoed through the dust. She had sworn to protect her team then, just as she would protect these passengers now. A light blinked on the overhead panel, secure cockpit access. The captain's voice called, "Miss, the crew says you've been using some kind of device. I need you to step forward, please." Ava rose, feeling dozens of eyes on her. "It's okay," she said softly, handing her backpack to the attendant. "I'll fix this." The captain's jaw tightened as she entered the cockpit. The co-pilot's hands shook on the controls, and the radar screen flickered with static. "Who are you?" the captain demanded. Ava looked at him steadily. "The only person who can make sure we don't disappear today." Then she leaned over the radio and switched it to a coded frequency, her fingers flying over the dials with expert precision. "Raptor 1, this is Raven 01. New orders. Stand down. I'm taking over control of this flight's transponder. Confirm visual." The pilots responded immediately, their tone almost respectful now. "Copy that, ma'am. Standing by." The captain stared at her like she was from another planet. "How did you—" "Because I used to command them," she said, eyes glinting. Suddenly, another voice broke through the channel, one Ava hadn't heard in years, dripping with arrogance. Well, well, Raven 01, I always knew the grave couldn't hold you forever." Ava froze. "Nolan," she whispered. "What do you want?" His laugh was cold, echoing through the comms. "Just what's mine. The world's forgotten you, but not me. And now that I know you're alive, I can finish what I started." The signal cut off with a burst of static. Ava's reflection stared back at her in the glass, calm yet fierce, her mind already calculating the next move. The quiet passenger was gone. Commander Raven had returned. The storm clouds churned as lightning illuminated the F-22s outside, their sleek frames gliding like steel ghosts beside the airliner while inside. Ava's voice stayed calm, though her mind raced faster than the engines. She knew Nolan Voss never made idle threats. If he'd gone to the trouble of luring her out, he already had a plan in motion. "Captain," she said evenly, "change our course 10 degrees north, now." He hesitated. "Ma'am, air control didn't authorize— They didn't authorize our destruction either," she snapped, her tone sharp enough to slice through his fear. The co-pilot obeyed, tilting the aircraft just as a radar ping lit up the screen, an approaching signal unregistered and closing fast. Ava's stomach tightened. "Drone strike," she muttered. "He's going to make it look like an accident." Without hesitation, she grabbed the emergency comm, switching to the F-22's channel. "Talon leader, incoming threat, vector 031, distance 120 miles. Prepare to intercept." The older pilot's voice came back strong. "Copy Raven 01, engaging target." The Raptors broke formation, roaring into the storm as thunder swallowed their sound. The cabin lights flickered. Passengers gasped, some praying, others frozen in terror. The mother clutched her child tighter, whispering, "Please, God." Ava stood in the cockpit doorway, every nerve alive, watching the radar as two dots converged. Then a flash, one bright burst that vanished into static. A few seconds later, the F-22 pilot's voice came through, breathless. "Target neutralized! Threat eliminated." Relief swept over her like rain, but before she could exhale, Hale's voice cracked through the secure line. "Ava, get ready." That was only the distraction. "He's rerouting your flight through restricted airspace. You're headed straight toward an automated defense perimeter." Ava's eyes widened. "He's trying to make the Air Force shoot us down." She gritted her teeth, flipping the system override switch and typing a string of codes that hadn't been used in over a decade. The panel beeped, red turning green. "Override accepted. Raven command priority confirmed," the system said in a robotic voice. The captain stared at her in awe. "Who are you?" She met his eyes, calm and unflinching. "Someone who doesn't let innocent people die." The storm cleared as dawn light broke through the clouds, the plane stabilizing at last. Outside, the F-22s flanked them once more like silent escorts guiding a queen home. Hale's voice returned, softer this time. "You saved them, Ava. Again." She didn't answer, just stared at the rising sun. Somewhere out there, Nolan Voss was still alive, still watching, but for now, she'd won. The quiet passenger had reminded the world that legends never really die. As Flight 92 touched down on the runway, surrounded by armed security vehicles and flashing blue lights, passengers broke into tears of relief, unaware of how close they'd come to never seeing the ground again. Ava sat quietly in her seat, hood back over her head, the faint hum of the engines fading into silence. When the doors opened, She rose slowly, her backpack slung over her shoulder, and walked down the aisle as soldiers and agents outside waited in confusion, wondering who the Air Force had scrambled for. General Hale stood at the tarmac, eyes locked on her as she stepped into the morning light. "You really are alive," he whispered. Ava gave a faint smirk. "Guess death didn't suit me." Hale nodded solemnly. "You saved 216 souls today, Raven, but you've also painted a target on your back again." She looked toward the horizon where the F-22 circled one last time before disappearing into the clouds. "Let them come," she said softly. "This time I'm not running." She turned to walk away, blending into the crowd of civilians, vanishing just as quietly as she'd appeared. Hale watched her go, a mix of pride and fear in his eyes, before muttering into his radio, "All units, stand down. Raven 01 is off the grid." Somewhere far away in a dimly lit office, Nolan Voss watched the footage from a surveillance feed, his jaw tightening. "So the ghost still breathes," he muttered. "Good. The game begins." Back on the tarmac, the wind swept across Ava's hair as she disappeared into the sea of people, her expression calm, but her eyes burning with purpose. The world thought she was just the quietest passenger, but the sky had remembered her name.